to keep going on and continuing on what we were talking about Jesus as quantum, master of quantum energy, and how he single-handedly destroyed the Roman Empire. There was before Jesus and after Jesus. That's what he did to the zeitgeist. He changed the whole form of perspective for the people of the Roman Empire. It's really interesting, a few things I noticed about history. First of all, it's written by the feds, okay? I was having a great conversation with a few friends the other day about how the Roman Empire was the original control unit before we got into the Catholic Church and all the three-letter agencies that rule the United States now for the elites. The zeitgeist is controlled by the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire never fell, y'all. And once we understand that, we understand why we're living in the same time problem. What does that mean? It means we're still having a war on consciousness. The people are being constantly in a conscious warfare with the captors that enslave our minds and our consciousness. And see, the thing is that we don't realize it's happening. And because of that, we're left thinking, maybe it's all in my head. I don't really know what's going on. I need somebody else to tell me how to think and how to do things because I can't rely on myself. And what Jesus did was teach people how to rely on themselves. And that was something the Roman Empire did not want. The Roman Empire does not want people to know how to take care of themselves, okay? They wanted people to rely on the empire, rely on the colonizer to survive. So the Roman Empire is still ongoing today. It never left. It's still the same players, same nasty Roman emperors doing nasty entitled things. An interesting thing that is something to think about is the timeline between Jesus Christ, Julius Caesar, and Cleopatra. I want to look back into the timeline and see exactly why it is so interestingly difficult to find out a few very simple things. They tell us so much about Jesus, and they basically colonize our mind with the teachings of the Roman Empire's version of who Jesus Christ was. But if what we glean of the man in the Bible, in the good book, we could see that there is a man who can shift water into wine. There is a man who tells people they can shift the water frequency and tell the fish to show up and fish them easily and have all the food you need. And this is something that the colonizers don't want us to have. They don't want us to be able to have our own version of consciousness, our own version of reality. And that's why they pump us with television, propaganda, and a whole bunch of the same people that have been bought and paid for by the elites in journalism and all these things. And, what are they doing? They're not doing anything that hasn't been done before, okay? So we're living in the same timeline as the revolution on the consciousness that we dealt with in the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago during the time of Jesus Christ. Okay, first of of all, Jesus was not a white guy, and he was not a Roman citizen. He wasn't entitled. He wasn't some weird Roman citizen who threw bread at gladiators and were really happy when they died in the arena. No, he was an Israelite. He was a man from the Middle East, okay? He was dark-skinned. He had dark hair, okay? But he was right next to Egypt. He was right next to what we call Iraq today. He was close to Europe at the same time, so he could have traveled down the Silk Road, some of these Arabic connected roads that led to England, such as the Tales of Avalon say. Now that his father would of Arimathea would Joseph of Arimathea would go down to England in a working trade that they had from the Middle East from in those times. So because they were all Roman colonies. And so when we start to understand that the Roman Empire has everything to do with the war on consciousness, and that it always had, and that the Crusades, we have then the Crusades that took over all the entire Zoroastrians, civilization, who were the very strong consciousness explorers from the Middle East that came and originated from the cuneiform tablets that originated over 6,000 years ago from the pre-Diluvian civilizations that survived the flood and landed in ancient Sumeria, where they wrote everything down in clay tablets in ancient cuneiform with whittled down bamboo sticks and different types of rods from the lakes and the waters in the region. And, thank you guys. I appreciate the support. But, look, what we got to understand about Jesus is that he's completely misrepresented by the people in power today, by the Roman power force today. And when we understand that we are no different than in those times, and when we understand that we are the Christ consciousness that we want to see in the world, because Jesus was telling all of us we could do it. He was teaching us all how to do it ourselves. His true followers were also quantum masters. They could shift consciousness, shift quantum, because he taught them how. And it all started with what? The heart space, with the love of every single being, and understanding that we were all God's children. And this was a serious problem for the Roman Empire, okay? And they want to blame everything on their colonies at the time and say, oh, somebody else, it wasn't the Roman Empire that killed Jesus. Well, yeah, actually it was the Roman Empire that killed Jesus, okay? That's exactly who killed Jesus, the Roman Empire. Okay, so let's remember that the Roman Empire has not fallen. We are still under the control of the Roman Empire, and that the Roman Empire killed Jesus. Okay, what does that mean for us as humans? Well, Jesus, I was talking to a good friend of mine, and she was discussing some of the historical aspects of what they thought really actually happened to Jesus after he was crucified. And it turns out, okay, we know he resurrected. Well, also that he healed himself, because he was a quantum master and he was able to heal his wounds. Anybody who's shocked about this shouldn't be, because it's Jesus. He was the quantum master. And that is what we want to learn how to do, is to be able to heal ourselves and to be able to shift the molecular structure of our bones, our blood, our skin tissue, our organ tissue, and be able to realign and calibrate any wound, any illness, anything. And so, of course, if anyone would be able to do it, it would be Jesus, okay? So, yeah, it makes sense that Jesus survived the crucifix, okay? The crucifixion of him. And then he went on his ways. He went on his way and he traveled. Now, we don't know where Jesus traveled and where he went, but him and Mary Magdalene were like a true couple, and they kick her out, again, from the books. Talking to a good friend of mine who was discussing this with me the other day. And with Paul, who was never a bro at all for Jesus, okay? In fact, they worship Paul at the Knights of Malta and the Crusades. Now, let's talk about the Crusades and how they went and destroyed all of the Middle East's consciousness, treasure trove of religion and spirituality, and inserted Islam, okay, version of the Christian Judeo book. Okay, so everybody has to have the same warped view from one book that has been completely colonized by the Roman Empire and sold off for spare parts all over the controlling world that they had at the time, and that was Europe and the Middle East. You know, because Middle East and Europe are very close. It's not like America. It's really cool how close they are together and how different the cultures are. And it really, you know, helps to go and travel there and see how easy it is for the Europeans to go and go to the Arabic countries, and how easy it is for them to travel to Egypt, to the ascension chambers out there in Egypt. And, you know, to really understand that Jesus was doing the same things. He was going around. He was, Jesus is going around and he's teaching the people, but he's also, he got there by learning and being able to travel all around the Middle East to all of these really amazing occult places to find out how to become enlightened and how to master quantum energy, which was what the Zoroastrians were masters at, because they're coming from the ancient Sumerian cuneiform religions that had gone and passed down from the pre-Diluvian civilizations before the flood. Okay, that ended up in Sumeria. And so when we look at this, we have to see how big of a missing piece there is in our spiritual consciousness history, and how a lot of it has been taken away from us from the Roman Empire, because when they saw what Jesus did, they couldn't let it happen again. Okay, so, you know, it's important to understand that Jesus was really against taxes, really against the Roman Empire, controlling the people, controlling the zeitgeist, controlling the energy. I mean, they had the Roman citizens just so bloodthirsty and just, you know, throwing horrible things at the captives enslaved inside the arena, who were fighting to the death for their own lives. And this kind of very bloodthirsty, very nasty type of meat-hungry, vampiric society, feeding off the pain and suffering of others, is something that the consciousness abusers of the empire do and use to keep the people in a feeding frenzy of war. Hello, welcome to my channel. This is Opal Unicorn. Thank you for watching. I hope you all have a great day.